Good evening. It is now 6 o'clock, so I'd like to call the Planning Commission meeting of Monday, May 22nd to order. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Urbani.
Here.
Commissioner Hawley.
Here.
Commissioner Chorin.
Here.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Here.
Alderman Stralchuk.
Here.
Mayor Nurbin.
Here. I assume we've got just enough for a quorum? All right, we're good. First up, we have approval of the meeting minutes from April 24th.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any comments or questions? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes are passed. Before we get too much deeper, I would remind everyone, if you want to talk, push the button on the microphone. I'm the only one that can push and have it stay on, but you have to push and hold. Just cuts down on the feedback and makes the audio much better, especially online. So that brings us to regular business. First up, we have Jilly's Car Wash. The applicant is seeking a master sign plan approval for the property located at 10829 Northport Washington Road. I presume Assistant Director Zader will give us a brief overview.
Yes, this was a request for mostly directional signs. The freestanding sign and the building wall sign have already been approved and installed. During our final inspection, we noticed that there were some other signs up, so that we reached out to the applicant and stated we need to get a master sign plan for all the directional signs. The original package had 27 signs. We met with them. We felt that probably wasn't going to be acceptable, so we got it down to 8. We tried to put the signs in least conspicuous locations as possible. So we're okay with the 8 signs are requested. The only, I guess, difference is we feel that the signs, and I have a picture up on the screen for you, these were actually taken down after they originally put up, but these signs above the entranceways are basically roughly about 14 square feet. We just think those are too large, and those could be reduced to 8 square feet a piece. The pay here is very large, and there really doesn't need to be a lot of language on that. It could be just pay here and / unlimited memberships in a smaller font, and I think people still get the idea where to go in. So we do recommend approval of the sign plan with the condition that these be reduced to 8 feet or 8 square feet in area. Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. Before we bring it to the commission, does the applicant have anything to weigh in on? Thank you. Any comments from the commissioners? Commissioner Chorin.
Jack, you said that those are 14 square feet?
Approximately right, yeah.
13 and a half.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you want to go down to 8?
Yes.
So what dimensionally are they versus what are you proposing?
Well, I think they could do a 2x4 would be fine. 2 foot by 4 foot would work out okay. I reached out to them to see if they could show us something what they could look like. I don't think they had time to get something to us today, but I think at that size it still will be easily to read in terms of wayfinding where to go in. And originally I suggested that they only had one sign over the unlimited members only, and then the rest just leave off, because I assume that case people would understand that they could go in there. But it sounds like from their business model that the unlimited members think that they can only go on that first lane. So then we were amenable to having the 3 different signs, but I just think they're too large. I mean, that's our multi-tenant buildings are typically about 15 or 30 square feet, so this is almost half the size of a typical multi-tenant building on a retail or a strip service center. So it's a pretty large sign, and again, with all our other uses similar to this, we try to limit the amount of signage as much as possible and the size of the signage to keep it down to a matter of just providing the wayfinding necessary to have the business function. I think in this case, it's just too large.
So there's set way back off of Port, we know that,
Correct.
and they're already constructed and installed, correct?
Well, they were told to take down, they took them down after they got their temporary occupancy, so they're not installed right now. They were, and they were removed.
Could we throw up the picture I sent earlier?
This is it. I have it up
This is
there.
it?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, before they got taken down, I just drove in with my car, snapped it from the road. So that's what you'd see if you were driving in. I guess I went online and I compared those signs with the signs at Mequon Mobile and overlaid them one another. I think that the challenge for me is that they're trying to convey more info than the typical car wash lane where it usually just says touchless or soft touch. There's more text. The font size is actually almost identical. They're just trying to put more words in. So we're not concerned that people won't be able to find it quickly from the road, because I know geometry for the turning is kind of tight there.
Well, you're going to know that the location of if I go back to the other sign, so basically from Port Road, you're way down here. So you're going to have to be basically in the queue to see those three different locations. So you're going to be relatively close. So I don't think a distance would be an issue with a smaller sign there, because you're not looking at it from Port Washington Road. You're looking at it from the private road once you're in the ICAP development area.
It's just hard to visualize what a 2x4 would look like. It's almost half the size. Well, it's 60% the size.
Yeah, and I do agree. We kind of struggle a little bit with this one because this is it's a car wash, but it's also not a typical car wash where there's this membership tier to it. Where, like, I did take some pictures of Quick Trip. They don't have very many signs, but Quick Trip, there's not a membership component of it, so you just pick, Elite or whatever the other different options are, and there's a soft touch option and a touch free. So this one we were okay with allowing them to have their membership pricing on there because that people do pay for the memberships on site when they come in. But I just think, again, a smaller sign there was an example at the last planning commission they provided, which I didn't really think was a great example, but there was one where it just said cash, and it was a channel letter sign, very small yellow sign. I mean, I wouldn't suggest that either, but it was that sign was relatively small, and I'm sure that was highly visible.
Commissioner Hawley.
I guess my thought is that if we got them down from 27 signs to 8, maybe because these are already done, we just let it go. They're already constructed, they'd have to start over. And because they're already like in the car wash, way to the back, it's not really hurting anything. They are too big, but I'm willing to let it go.
I would just caution on that, on your approval, because we don't want to be in a position where it's asked for forgiveness for other signs as well. So there should be another rationale.
Oh, Commissioner Schaefer.
That was what I was trying to formulate. Bless it. What I was trying to formulate is as a rule, I don't ask for forgiveness instead of permission, and I'm not saying you do that intentionally. I'm saying in general, on the record, that doesn't fly. However, in this case, for the same reasons that Commissioner Hawley said, I feel like, and when I look at it, it's not jarring to me in this photo where I feel like this is way out of proportion. I think I would be willing to make an exception in this case, not to set a precedent for others, whoever the others are. But I think in this case, it would be something that I could get behind.
Commissioner Stralchek.
I too struggled with this a little bit. If you had them made prior to approval, you should have known better, and we've got a sign code that's well published and well discussed at every single meeting. So that one's on you. That's not on us to make exceptions because you had signs made in advance. So the forgiveness later is not an option for me. In fact, it's more of a sticking point than anything else. Please don't do it in the future. I'm looking from a sign background. I worked in signage for years, graphics and design, and these don't bother me at the size that they're at. My questioning would be if we reduced them to half the size, what will we do with the clearance sign underneath? Because that being bigger than the actual sign above would be bothersome for me. It would look out of place, and I would want that redone as well if we do go smaller, with those clearance signs. So, Jack, what's your opinion on that? Because you're only commenting on the sign space itself, not the clearance.
Well, I think that my suggestion would be if we had it's kind of hard to see in this, let me try to zoom in a little bit. My thought would be basically, and the reason I came up with 8 is, again, quick math, just basically taking the portion that says pay here and making that the sign for both, and then shifting it down. And I think that would still fit in nice there, because that pay here section of it's probably pretty close to 8. It might be a little bit above, but it's pretty close to 8. I think if you shifted the pay here sign font the same size as the unlimited members, I think you could fit them both within that smaller section. And you put that right above the clearance, I think it would still look fine.
Okay, so the reason that I'm okay with this as it's shown now, and I want to be very careful to not set a precedent, because if this was bright yellow with, orange text, I wouldn't be supportive of it at all. What I'm liking about this is this tone on tone. It's a neutral earth color, earth or water, being that it's, pretty much tone on tone blue. I think it frames the area well. It complements the other signage, as well, but I don't want to approve something and then, that's the size moving forward and they can switch it to any color moving forward. I want some precedent being set that, the fact that it's this way is the reason that we'd consider approval. So is there a way to craft that?
I would just say as
Statement.
submitted, as what they've submitted, so that way it has to match that, and if there's any change, you could require it to come back for an amendment.
Yeah, I mean, that's the assumption for anything else. Any additional changes or any changing this out for a different font or color, that they'd have to come back for sign approval
Sure,
anyway,
you could make that as
under a
part of the
master
motion.
sign plan, correct?
Sure. Yep.
Yep, okay.
That sounded dangerously close to a motion.
Yeah, I'd move approval allowing them to keep the signs as they are, for the pay here section, as submitted. But if any changes would be made to it, they'd have to come back for master sign plan approval, whether it be color or font or anything else.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further comments or questions? I saw someone's hand raised. Are you,
Can the audience comment at this point?
well, sure, if we take a vote, then it'll all be over. There'll be no chance to comment. If you'd like to comment, please come up to the mic and say your name and address, and we'll get it into the record.
Yeah, thank you. Joe Sorensen, 1428 West De La Warr Circle. I have no dog in this particular fight other than when I moved here 20 years ago, this wasn't Blue Mound Road. It's now turning into Blue Mound Road. And 3 of you just said, well, I don't want to set a precedent. But that's exactly what you're doing. So if you allow, somebody came in and said, wait for sign approval, the size, et cetera, whatever your comments were, and then they go ahead and do it anyway, that is a precedent. You have now allowed the next guy to do it. And so now we're going to see signs that are yay by yay up and down Port Washington Road. And as a local, a very close resident, I would object to that. I don't think you're following your own rules. And just as a resident, I'd say, just like you said, Commissioner, if you did it without approval, that's on you. So that's my comment. I would say, again, nothing against Jilly's, but I don't think this should be approved. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to be clear, there's no clear-cut guideline for the size of these, because that's why we have to have a master sign plan for the site. It was just a feeling by staff that they were too large. It's different from other signs you just hang on the side or have a monument sign by the road, but it's not exactly a precedent because someone would be taking a gamble and doing that at their own risk, much like what happened here. This may work out in the applicant's favor, but it would not so in every instance. Commissioner Strelchak.
Yeah, I just want to edit my motion. I'm going to keep the essence the same. However, I do want to add that it is not clearly visible from the road. It's more tucked away. And then I also wanted to add that it's not just any car wash sign where it's a pay here, order here. There's a need to communicate based on membership where people would, which lanes they would go through, and that is the only reason for my exception to what staff recommended. And if
Yeah.
the seconder could accept the friendly amendment, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, I think you would want to say that due to the nature of the business, that would kind of eliminate some of the concern over precedent.
Due to the nature of the business, yes.
Approved.
So a friendly amendment and a friendly seconding of the amendment. Any further comments or questions from the commissioners? Yeah. Perhaps a important thing to note, there was a little bit of a compromise here to get them down. This is maybe a little bit on the other side of the ledger. Okay. Well, that mic's working exceptionally well, isn't it? We've never had this problem before. Are there any further comments from the commissioners, or are we ready for a vote? Looks like we're ready for a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that is approved as amended just now. Thank you. Next, we have Aurora Healthcare. The applicant is seeking the building and site plan amendment approval to allow for a 2,700 square foot addition for the property located at 6425 West Mequon Road. First, this needs to be removed from the table.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor of removing from the table, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? This item is now before us.
Good evening, Commissioners. This is a 2,700 square foot addition to the Aurora property. It's located at the corner of Buntrock and Mequon Road, and it is in the town center neighborhood. Clearly, there are nonconformities in terms of building placement and parking location, but the property, existed prior to the town center zoning district being in place. Much of our focus and effort over the last several weeks is in and out. Oh, thank you.
It's very sensitive to how you address the microphone now.
Oh, okay. So I shouldn't move very much? Is that what you're saying?
I think that's what I found.
Okay, okay, good to know. So we've spent quite a bit of time working with the applicant on appropriate features along each of the public streets because it is at an intersection. There is redevelopment that's around it. We explored alternatives for the building addition placement, and there just really wasn't a good solution to that. It is to the rear, to the southwest. It really resulted in segregated buildings or not very conducive floor plans. We also explored options for the additional proposed parking to be along the west property line and keep it tucked away on the side of the interior side of the building and away from the public streets so that we didn't further create greater nonconformity. That did not prove to be an option either. So what we really looked at was mimicking the streetscaping that is on Buntrock, similar to what's been implemented with Foxtown in particular, but also some of the sequence that we've found with Artesa and the townhouse project to the south. So what you see there is a number of landscaping beds with the introduction of street trees. On that side of the road, it's not your typical curb and gutter. There is a slope to that, and it would make it look kind of odd, I think, if we added street trees. So we wanted to, street light fixtures. So we wanted to keep it a little bit softer in its design. And then what we talked about in terms of trying to meet the spirit and intent of having buildings placed at the public street no greater than 10 feet off of the property line at each of those streets was to modify and enhance the existing Aurora sign and the structure associated with the sign. So Aurora was amenable to pulling all of that up to the corner. It's still a little bit of a distance off of the intersection because the city has a lot of right-of-way right there. You can see our street trees just beyond their north property line. But they're including a seat wall. Staff is recommending no less in height than 3.5 feet, and then another seat wall that faces Bunch Rock that includes the sign cabinet as part of that wall, and then a enhanced landscaping bed. There was some give and take with this location because the city's town center gateway sign was intended to go on that corner as well. But once we started looking at, something other than a building at this corner and the street trees, what Foxtown has for a patio, us adding our neighborhood sign was just going to be a lot of structure, a lot of vertical elements right on that corner. So we asked Aurora if they were willing to grant us, or the property owner grant us, an easement on the very northwest corner of their site so that we could relocate the town center gateway sign there. I think it's a really nice solution because it'll stand on its own. It's also a nice location because as you're making that curve on Mequon Road, you're going to get a nice direct sight line into that space. There's a couple of challenges that we're just faced with as we continue to move forward, and we're asking for the Planning Commission's approval tonight subject to these conditions. There are a number of below grade utility lines here. We did have Digger's Hotline come out. Some of them appear to be outside of the utility easement that's actually shown on the Alta survey. So we're not quite sure how that happened. Representatives from Aurora are reaching out to We Energies to see if we can address that. If that were to be the case, and as shown on this plan, the two seat walls are somewhat segregated from one another in order to have that gap over those buried utility lines. And then the secondary issue is that they do have a request for their sign to be taller in height than what the town center zoning district allows. The town center zoning district requires 6 feet in height. Their cabinet is actually 5, but because we're asking them to add a seat wall and add a little bit more of a massing at that corner to compensate for not having a building there, the proposal for the sign overall is 8, not the sign, but the structure and the sign is 8 feet. So as we go through any final designs with this, we would just want to make sure that that sign overall doesn't get greater than 8 feet in height. I guess one last thing, the city is landscaping on our right-of-way some transformers. So just north of their landscaping bed, you can see a little box right on the property line. There are a couple other above-ground transformers. We're going to landscape that. Thanks, Jack. So we've asked, and as part of a condition of this approval, that our landscaping beds have some continuity to it. Maybe they connect, maybe not, but just so that those two don't look like they're not at all relating to one another. And Aurora has been accepting of that as well.
Thanks for that overview. We certainly have a lot of activity out on Mequon Road right now. Any comments or questions from the commissioners, or is there anything the applicant would have to add? Anyone representing Aurora have any feedback on staff's report or comments you'd like to make?
No, the comments are understood, and like Kim said, we worked a lot with Kim, so there's nothing unexpected in the conditions.
Okay, always like to check. Commissioner Chorn.
I don't recall that there were any building elevations, any views of the building. Are we not discussing that?
I think the building elevations were shown at the last meeting. I'm sorry if those weren't included, but the building structure matches in terms of building material, the rhythm of the windows. Originally, they had not proposed any brick along the base of the building, but that has been modified per Planning Commission's recommendations previously.
So it matches what's there?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Kim, how does this sign compare in height to the Foxtown sign? This will be quite a bit taller, right? Because they're at abutting corners.
The Foxwall wall, I think, was a little bit taller than 6 feet in height.
Oh, it
right?
is? And the,
Yeah, when you measure from the inside versus the outside, it was different. That was the issue. So it's about 6 feet.
so not glaringly different that it would look like, whoa, why is this one so tall? Okay.
I don't think so, and I think because it's a little bit farther set back.
Okay.
Yeah, it's competing with other things we're putting there, so it's got to almost get up a little bit farther so you can see it.
Yeah.
I will say I feel like having an additional urgent care is probably a great thing. I feel like I had 2 friends in the last week that reached out saying, where should I go if I have this going on, and couldn't get into area urgent cares. So I think that's a good addition.
Commissioner Strelchak.
I've just got a question on the street trees. As a parent that drove a kid to school pretty much every day for 3 years, coming out of that spot and turning right on a red light can be kind of challenging just with the speed of traffic in general. Line of sight with the proposed street trees, are those in the way because of the way the road kind of curves back there? I just want to draw attention for staff to review that maybe one additional time and make sure that we're not creating a hazard by trying to create a streetscape.
Yeah, Alderman, though, those street trees are already in place, the ones beyond their north property line, except the one closest to the intersection has now been removed. So I think if there was a little bit of a hindrance from a site view perspective, looking back west, I think it would have probably been that first tree, and now that's removed.
Okay, good. Just the plan showed it, and it looked like they were drawn in, so I wasn't sure if they were new or existing.
Ah, Commissioner Torn. Are you good? Okay. Anyone else? Or is there a motion, perhaps?
I'd move approval per staff conditions.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further comments or questions? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And that is approved. Congratulations. Next up, we have Fifth and Main. The applicant is seeking a sign design approval for the property located at 1550 West Mequon Road. Nope, this is first time in front of us.
So the application before the Planning Commission tonight is strictly regarding design. The sign otherwise technically complies with the sign code. The sign was modified in fall of last year that made it non-conforming to its actual sign permit. So the way to rectify that was to seek a modification to the sign design. At the time, our department received a lot of comments both from the public, elected officials, even former Planning Commission chair persons regarding that particular design. The applicant has since modified that in advance of requesting this particular approval. Essentially, they've added a pink detail as an outline to each one of those tenant panels. The sign code does require that the color scheme, match the principal building or other attributes of the property, and in this case it's difficult for staff to say that the tone of that pink matches anything else on the structure or the building. And when the sign code administrator, which is any member of our department, doesn't believe that we can have compliance with those technical standards of the code, we can and should advance it to the Planning Commission for final decision. other opportunity would be to find a color that perhaps is contrasting to help give it that that pop, I guess. But then we would recommend that the applicant submit a proposal that shows that other color, contrasting color, being incorporated throughout the site or throughout the building. I did note, and I do, want to add here tonight that the city's architectural review standards, as it relates to structures, talk about having the colors be consistent with the building, with the surroundings, and that the city finds even colors of the building and architecture to be of significant visual impact. So we wouldn't suggest that we continue to we wouldn't advocate for the use of the tone of this particular pink color to be incorporated throughout the site. But if there's other contrasting color, we're open, and we're suggesting that they bring forward a proposal to work that color into the rest of the site. So staff refers the design to the Planning Commission for your review.
Thank you. Any comments from the commissioners or perhaps the applicant? Could you push the button? Sorry.
We did go under rebranding in October with initially changing it to a full pink background. We've since modified it to just have this 4-inch border. The pink, though, is part of our branding too, so we use it throughout our social media, our literature, and we are opening even a 3rd location, which that sign will too have that same, not in this town, but have that same pink border to be something that's recognized for our company. It has also increased to, we had a lot of difficulties with people finding us when we first moved and opened in Mequon. And by adding that pink border, we've gotten not only the feedback that it's made it easier to find us, but our customers actually give us the feedback that they like the sign too. So we do think that there is different hues of pink in the building as well. So it does draw out from the building, especially at night too, when the lights are aimed at it. It almost makes it a more orange kind of coral color, like you see also in the building, in addition to the pink in the stone.
Thank you. Commissioners, any feedback on the proposal at hand? Commissioner Chorin?
Well, it certainly is a great improvement to what was there. That was jarring. I mean, it was just way too much. I was thinking about the whole conversation this evening about other signs and the fact that, signs, as Alderman Strelchik said, you use a theme or a color that's appropriate to the business or the building, and I don't see the pink as being anywhere representative in the building, although it's what you're saying is it has something to do with your business. So certainly is better what it was, but it still is a little disturbing to me.
Commissioner Hawley?
Do we have a picture of the building so we can just see the colors next to each other?
Yeah, there's one in the packet.
Black and white?
It's black and cream, and this lamp and stone is your typical cream. It does have some rust color to it, I would say.
Do really seem like they're on the grayscale. I'd be happy to pull up our own pictures.
Pinkish hues to the building. There's
Yeah.
no question about that. It's basically undeniable, and if it is not acceptable, then I have no problem painting the black space on it pink.
Yeah, we've talked about different ways to incorporate the pink since that is part of our branding and elsewhere in the building itself, if that makes it more of an encourageable thing.
I think if you went to packet page 45, that same stone is present on the actual monument sign itself, I believe. And that's a little more, there's more color in that picture. I think it was raining the day we took the other one.
Yeah, you can tell the grass is,
Do I have to push this?
it's on.
Okay, I'd also just like to add too that it was actually said to us by by
The staff.
the staff that there were other places such as BMO Harris, Mobile, Amico, all that actually violate another aspect of the code in regards to being the same as traffic signs, but because it's of their branding, it was acceptable. So to me, this feels like discrimination if this is our branding, and we're not allowed to have the 4-inch border of pink on our sign.
One question I had, I'm Lisa Lawless, lawyer, is if it would be more consistent with the architectural standards and the zoning, and the ordinance, to have subtle accents on the outside of the building that incorporate the pink, that are acceptable to the city, I don't know, mailbox, or things that are
Even painting it.
humongous on the building, but that create the theme of the pink.
Yeah.
I think that may be something that can blend even more the building with, that definitely is beautiful colors with hot pink on the sign itself. So I wondered if that would be possible.
And my proposal is a stripe of pink across the front, matching the sign. 4 inches, it'll make it
Well,
completely cohesive.
we're not here to discuss modifications to the building, just the sign. I think,
Right, but that would solve the problem.
well, it's not on the agenda, so we can't even discuss it. I guess where I struggle is if this was a brand-new business going in and we were doing a sign approval at the beginning, it would be a hard sell to believe it would go through like this. This is another one where it's after the fact, and it wasn't done as part of the original application for the business. So the branding was created after the business was there. So it's hard to say the branding existed predating this because clearly it changed recently.
That doesn't mean that we're not allowed to change our branding.
You can change your
So
branding,
we've
but I
called
think this is clearly
to
an area
ask
where
about what we
the
were
city has
supposed to
some. Hey,
do.
excuse me.
Oh my gosh.
Well, I was
City has
talking
some.
first, but
We can table this if we'd like. I'm perfectly happy with that.
I feel like we're being bullied.
So that you can't sit there and claim you were bullied when you changed it without approvals.
We've called twice
I
to
did
make sure that
contact.
all we had to do was within our monument sign. You can speak because you
Yeah.
talked to them.
I did speak to the staff right when we first took occupancy, and then again, just to clarify, because we've had to deal this with other signage in, Thiensville, so I know that that normally is, but we were told because I'm not changing the actual sign, and we were just changing the things that are getting slipped into those slots, that it did not matter. We did not have to come for approval, and it did not matter what color or anything. I called twice because I thought it was also very odd. So that's what I was told. So we didn't preemptively do anything to come back at the city or anything like that. We were just doing what we thought we had the right to do. So again, and that's why we also have changed it over to the pink border to try to compromise now that we've gotten the reaction that we had with the full pink background, excuse me.
Commissioner Stralchek.
I'm looking at your website. You have pink text. Pink isn't associated anywhere near your logo.
We've
Okay,
used it.
it's an accent color on the website at best. It's typical website use, but your logo doesn't have a pink border on it on your website. So to call it your branding isn't true. Branding is a logo. I went through the same argument with Associated Bank. They wanted to say the green color of their building being lit up at night was part of their logo. Certainly wasn't. I think we went through a lot just to get a secondhand store approved in this location. I advocated for you heavily, so anything but being bullied on my part. I was one of your strongest advocates because of the quality job and the upscale look that you had in Thiensville, and I thought it'd be a nice benefit to Mequon. Okay, I was shocked when I saw that bright pink sign with that neon pink, and it was, nothing short of what we're trying to avoid from a visual aspect in the city. That color wouldn't have been approved here at Planning Commission. I've got 20 years in graphics and 10 years in signage that I have behind me sitting on this council, and I wouldn't have approved it. I think that the pink border on this doesn't really tie in. I was a local Mequon business. I was in a strip mall where all the same signs were all the exact same. They were white and black, and people said, oh, you couldn't see them. But we do have things in place so that you can have your business visible. There are banners that are allowable at certain times of the year. If you want to make those banners pink and you make them within a legal size and you put them in a legal location, and I ask you to check with staff, you can draw some great attention to your business. I will talk to you on the side about this to help you keep your business in Mequon and to help support it. But what I want as a council member and a planning commission member is quality and an upscale look to our community. And I don't think the pink ties in with this. Now, talking about adding pink to the building so that it ties in with the sign that I wouldn't have approved in the first place is counterproductive on my part. Doesn't fit.
We don't want to do that.
Okay.
And I also very much appreciated your support. It was very hard at that point in time. I felt like we were being hazed. At this point in time, I feel like we're being bullied. But I do think that the business has proven to be an asset to Mequon thus far. So that's one of the reasons, too, I'm so shocked at, again, the fact that, well, one, that this is being challenged after we did make significant changes to the original sign, after we did call twice to get permissions to go ahead without having to get those actual permissions. We changed it too because we agreed with Mequon that it was too much. Once we saw it up there, we agreed it was absolutely too much. Now, we have a building right next door to us. I even think that you may have owned it in the past. And that building is a cream color completely with a bright red sign that lights up neon. There's also on Port Washington Road, 2 businesses in, there's, what's it called?
Well Body and then the
Well Body and the
Palace.
Chinese restaurant.
Palace.
And both of them have shocking pink signs that light up shocking pink at night. And the color of their building, nor is their branding shocking pink. I mean, and I understand, we can actually change if you truly feel that just because we have, and again, we wanted to have it all pink on, as we have on our website, as we have on all of our social media. But again, to help try to please Mequon, we did go with the thin border. And without this, because customers could not find our store, and we had that complaint time and time again, taking this pink border away would create a financial hardship for us.
But you had the black and white previously, right?
And that's where we have
Yes.
people that were not able to find us. I have not had one phone call since having added this where they are driving by and having to turn around because they can't. The whole first couple months that we were open, that was a constant daily phone call I got as to where we were located, because for whatever reason, people just drive by the white and black sign. But with that pink, it gives you something to look for more, and it is eye-catching. To catch that, to know you have to turn into that place to go, because we don't have, like the storefront windows we have downtown Thiensville. Because those windows don't,
I think my concern comes in, what you're describing is the nature of retail business, right? But if we consistently approve things based on the goal of being out-noticed by everybody else with something brighter, bigger, whatever, we're going to end up with a plethora of things that we really shouldn't have approved in the first place within the community. So, I'm struggling with this one. I want to support you guys, but I don't think the pink ties in with really what it needs to from the standpoint that things that I'd want to see within the community and how I'd want that to stand out. I think there's other methods that you could do that are quality methods to draw attention to your business and to gain traffic. Yes, we did own the building next door to yours. We owned 1516 Mequon Road for years. My grandfather owned it. And, we had signage battles with the city of Mequon. We had tenants and a sign, but we had to come for signage approval on everything that we'd change out on the signboard, and had to have discussions. And we had a challenging time. That was back in the Moriarty era, where things were even harder than what they are today. So I empathize with you, and I get it, but I generally just don't feel that neon pink is something that ties in with the area surroundings and really ties in with the surrounding. I feel like I can't approve it based on what that is, and for you to modify your building after the fact because you want the pink on the sign to be noticed, I struggle with that as well. That wouldn't be a term or condition for me to approve it here, tonight. I think there's other ways to promote your business. I think there's other ways to be visible and stand out. I think that your black and white sign is very visible. I think your biggest challenge on that road is that I don't believe it's boulevarded in front of your store, to turn in. I think you got to turn around. I think people are driving by at 50 miles an hour when they finally do see it. But I know Gigi's and Mequon didn't have problems getting people to that business. I know that when the breakfast place went in there, I know even the old guys found it. My dad found it no problem with all of his buddies, going into that building. And they all knew right where it was based on the address and Google Maps and things like that. So you have a lot of things working for you that I didn't back when I ran my business. I really like the black and white as it stands out for you. I think it does what it needs to do. It draws attention to it, and it's very clearly visible. I think any introduction to any other color is just distracting. I look at the pink instead of your logo. I'm being honest. I see the pink and I miss your logo, and I would as a driver tend to drive by it, in the future, unless you said, hey, I got pink highlights or whatever, and you called it out. But if you're giving verbal instructions for every person to come to your business, you can tell them right where you're at. It's just a half a block up on the right. Make sure you slow down. Don't get up to 50 miles an hour and you turn right in right before the sign. It's right there. I respectfully disagree with you.
And I hear you. I just know that through this conversation, it's been discussed as to whether this is like cohesive with the general area, but what this should be based on is the actual code. And please just consider the fact that the code, there are two codes really applicable to these signs. And one is specific to you can't have signage that is competitive with, I believe it's traffic signals. I don't even know if it goes so far as police colors, but there's a plethora surrounding us of those types of branded businesses. On top of that, we have an entire file of pictures from around Mequon of buildings that don't we at least have hues of pink in here, but are completely, even the company that was here before, their building doesn't have any blue on it, and yet they're getting approved for 8 blue signs? That's why this is just mind-boggling to me and I do feel like we're being singled out. And I'm not trying to be difficult, I'm just trying to stand up for my business. When I tell people Mequon's suing us over a pink sign, not one person, their jaw drops. Not one person can believe us. And we did change that. We have tried to, again, work towards a solution here that also embraces our business and what our business has moved towards by incorporating the pink. We started doing that at Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and we decided to keep it. And so now we have also done where every single month we partner with a charity so that we can, again, raise money. So everybody who comes in our store is asked at point of sale, would you like to round up and donate? And this, again, brings the attention to the fact that we are trying to also raise funds for others.
Commissioner Urbani.
So I'm a shopper. I like your store. I enjoy it. I was excited to see it move to Mequon.
Thank you.
And then the bright pink sign hit me because I do live over in that area, and that I agree with Commissioner Chorin. It was a lot. And so I was pleased mostly to see the downgrade to the stripe, but it is not on your website with a pink border. There are some words that are in pink. So if the new resale was in pink, that would totally flow with your branding, I think. Twitter, there is no pink. Pinterest, there is no pink. Facebook, there is the black pink, and Instagram, there is the black pink. So it's kind of disjointed. So I don't know if it's truly branding. I am not in marketing or advertising, so this is out of my wheelhouse. But the pink actually turned me off. I didn't know it was for breast cancer awareness. I didn't stop into the store at that point in time, so that didn't inform me of that part. I do believe some of the previous stores had problems being found. The first time I went to Wooden Goose after they moved, I went right past the driveway. I had never pulled in before. It's kind of a tough location because it's right on the end. If there was any way to connect your driveway with the businesses next door, so there was that boulevarding effect, that might be a really great solution. I don't know. I'm trying to brainstorm here. The pink does not, the pictures are bad. They were taken in the rain, I think. There is some hint of coral, I would say. But if you're stuck on that hue of pink, it's not in the building.
Again, respectfully, what I'm hung up on is how, again, can other businesses, and actually, I'm glad you pointed that out about Pinterest and Twitter. We really don't use those that often. That's why we probably haven't updated them. Actually, it is. But if other businesses are allowed, and now that it's been brought to everyone's attention that there are these businesses that have these different colors that are completely opposite of the building colors, how can this be turned down?
Excuse me, I'm not sure we have any of that info in front of us.
Well, it's blatantly visible when you drive down the street.
There's nothing in our packet regarding that. I'm not sure we can come to the conclusion that this is a widespread problem. We argue about color just about every time we talk about signs here. We've done it in the pavilions. It's a long-standing thing we've talked about, to have some consistency and what we don't want is people visually shouting for more attention, because then it will turn into Blue Mound Road, as residents are very concerned about that. But once we start amping up colors, everyone's going to start doing it. It's going to be a domino effect, and everyone's going to be competing to be seen more than the next guy's sign, and it will never end. So the pink for me just doesn't do it. I don't see the tie into the building. I agree to the website. Alderman Strelchuk's got it up here. There's pink on the website in text, but there's nothing in the logo. If it's part of marketing, it's kind of an afterthought to me. Commissioner Hawley.
Does the staff have any comments as to them calling and being told that it was okay? Do we have any proof of that or anything?
I don't have any record of that.
And yeah, all I can say is I know I did do it because I said I called twice under the, impression that it was very odd the first time I was given that answer that I didn't need to do anything. So that's why I called to verify again. So I should have got it in email, I guess, but.
And again,
But the code also indicates that no matter what, design has to stay within some continuity. So it doesn't necessarily give free range to do that. I mean, you can still submit the concept idea. It doesn't mean necessarily that there's a permit and a fee that has to be paid, but if it's that distinct from the original approvals, it would be, wise to run it past, because there are sections of the code, obviously, as we've pointed out in the staff report, that do speak to color scheme, and even goes to the extent, obviously, and probably even more important, but we talk about color a lot as it relates to architecture and structures. So obviously there's a theme throughout our code that color is important to the community, and I think the reaction to this particular sign suggested that it went beyond the threshold it desired by this community, and I think it's really about the tone, not necessarily pink per se. I think it's about the tone.
if I may also add, again, just to reiterate that, one more thing, please. Earlier during this very meeting today, blue signage was approved for a cream building. Blue signage was approved for a cream building.
And blue is very clearly part of Julie's branding. Their logo is
Isn't that,
blue.
though, a violation if it's a police color, though? I may have that wrong, but I believe that's also a police
No,
color. and
there's
that's
no
part of,
there's
like,
no
another
traffic
thing.
signage that color.
And it's part
Is
of
there a
our
motion?
branding. Oh, God, this is discrimination.
Good. I wanted,
Commissioner
I
Schaefer.
was interested in the one commissioner that had her hand up, what she was going to say. Not to
Okay.
interject.
I had to write it down because sometimes I have to write all my thoughts down because they get very swirly, especially when there's a lot of passion being brought. And I appreciate your concerns and I appreciate the passion behind behind your comments. Just wanted to be clear that you're not being sued. So I feel like to say that, and I'll get to this, but you're not being sued and you're not being bullied. And I understand when you feel singled out. Like I understand the passion behind it. To come in guns blazing, probably not the best approach. And I say that as someone who has come in guns blazing before. Like
Please
that's part of my
understand
MO.
it's a personality of
Yep.
trait of mine. I'm sorry.
No,
about
I
that.
feel it. I am with you. And I agree that there's other signs that are tied to branding where the coloring doesn't necessarily tie exactly to the building. So I think, and Kim just alluded to this, I think the crux of it here, I think it's the bright pink, and it works for a high fashion business, right? Anna Wintour would say, yes, you got it. But this is a different environment, and I think I'll have to look at the other pink that you mentioned. So Well Body and some Chinese restaurant
They're
have
next to
pink.
each other, yeah. And then there's
Is
also.
hung on pink or is it red?
No, it's
Okay.
pink. And
I think it's the tone, and I know, and that, yes, to you that probably feels like we are being singled out, and it is being singled out because it's the only bright pink that we have in the entire city. So I think that's, I'll speak for myself. That is what I am wrestling with. I don't disagree with some of the points that you've brought. I'm wondering, kind of to what Commissioner Hawley said about, do you remember the timing in which you called the city, whether you spoke to a man or a woman? I get that
I know
there's
I
a
spoke to
claim, and
woman.
I'm not.
Yeah, I don't have the name. I know I spoke to a woman, and it was right before we took occupancy, when we were just getting our actual signage just put in, which was the black and the white. I didn't describe though at all what we were doing or anything.
Yeah.
I just asked if what we would have to go through this process.
Yeah.
Just to change out those 3 sections on each side, and because again, we were not constructing, remodeling, doing anything different with the monument sign that existed when we purchased the
Yeah.
building. It was just verbiage that we could change it to say, anything for our business and no color, or there was no guidelines again. And then I called back probably right before we changed it, I believe, to pink. It might have been a little bit before, but, and I may have called actually 3 times because I think the first time, like I said, I was called twice. And then I think I called right before changing it to pink. Just to verify, again, we're just changing this section, anything. No, I was given no feedback as to that, and that I did not need to do anything.
Yeah.
So again, I know I spoke with a woman, but that's all and I know, yeah.
Did you say this sign's going to be bright pink, or did the color ever come up?
No, because we weren't sure yet at the time too exactly what shade we were gonna go with, even of pink, because there's, obviously many shades of pink. So, this is something that once I was just told that I could proceed forward with the sign because it was a pre-existing sign.
I will make a
just-
recommendation for staff. Anytime there's a question on a sign, have the applicant or whoever is asking the question put it in writing.
Yeah,
so there is a
I wish
record.
I had it in writing.
That is an entirely reasonable.
Well, it
request.
also has to be very clear what the question is, because if
Well,
somebody
it
calls
does,
and
yeah.
says, if I'm changing it, if I'm
It's-
changing a tenant panel out, do I need a permit? No, when you change out a tenant panel sign, you don't need a permit as long as it remains the same color and same style as the one that's there now.
That is what happens 99% of the
Yes,
time.
and we
where
get
we're just
those all the
changing tenant
time,
panel. It's the
correct.
same color, maybe a
It was
different font, but
documented
the same
that
look.
way, and it was actually a different color. Theirs was not white and black, it was like a cream, and then, Wooden Goose even had like a goose on it, so there was other colors and things. It wasn't just, yeah. And then I do have, this is it at night, but this is, I can, if you want me to approach with the phone, but it has.
Hung in, it looks like.
Yeah, that's the Chinese place, and then the next to it is Well Body. They're both pink during the day, and at night they light up to bright pink. So,
And to
Front ends are red,
bring this to a circle, I don't know, or something, the word is for it, my clients are really, we're happy to get to speak and speak their mind. We're also here to hear the input of the commissioners and of course staff. And I think knowing the city's position, knowing that the sign is almost there and would be approved, but for the color, and a different color may be approved if we work with the city, if my clients are agreeable, or they may go back to black and white, who knows? If, I don't know what the next step would be, if it approved with not the color or tabled, and the city, our side and the city can go back together and see if they can come to an agreement on color.
Well, I think either way, if came back with a different proposal, that would be a different item. So normally if we were to deny something, you couldn't come back for 3 months. But if it's a different proposal, that's a different, the clock resets. I think we can be reasonable there.
Injunction and keep the court case going.
It just depends what motion is about to be made.
And my understanding is that the city was amenable to working together so that a new application doesn't have to be filed, and that if a color is reached that's acceptable to the city, that it would be part of the same application. That was my understanding.
My staff report indicates that should the planning commission approve the sign as proposed, we would recommend waiving the ultimate sign permit application, which is $150 because they paid the $199 to be heard tonight at planning commission.
Meaning exactly what?
Just if the planning commission
if we
approved the
approved it
sign as
okay.
proposed tonight, because they were asked to go through this body to get their approval of just the design, because it's otherwise technically quantitatively compliant with the code, that because they paid $199 to come here and get that answer, we wouldn't charge them for the new sign permit in order to have this be the approved on record sign. So it's a little different than the actual process of planning commission applications that you just described.
So I guess if they came back with a tweak the color and soften the tone a couple hues and we found it was acceptable, I don't see the need to charge them another $150.
And that would have to accompany some other additions to the site, the building. I mean, that's up for discussion. I don't know what that solution is. If that's the choice of the planning commission, then your recommendation tonight would be to table.
Okay. Let's not do that yet, because as soon as there's a motion, we can't debate anything. Commissioner Hawley.
Are you guys in any way open to zhuzhing the color a little bit? Then I would, if you guys are not willing to like move on the color, then I would move to table.
Why would you table it if they're not willing to move on the color?
I think your motion would be to deny. If there was hope of coming to a resolution, we would table.
Well, my thought was that we would table it and then they could do some more research on the other businesses that they think are also in violation of the sign code and come back.
I think anything on any other site doesn't really affect what's happening on this site. That's just muddying the water. Those would be all separate issues that may or may not need other individual planning commission input if by chance they didn't get approved for some reason, which could happen. Sometimes people put things up that aren't approved and they fly under the radar for a while.
I'd make a motion to deny.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor of denying, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Oh, well, you can abstain.
I don't think I was ready to make a decision, sorry. I would say no. So.
All right, that matters concluded. The motion to deny carries. Next up, we have Gerald Nell Incorporated for Records Company. The applicant is seeking an expansion of a non-conforming use in building and site plan amendment approval to allow for a car wash and ancillary facilities for the property located at 11155 North Wauwatosa Road, the mobile station. First, we need a motion to remove from the table.
So moved.
Motion and a second to remove from the table. All those in favor of removing from the table, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And this motion is now before us. Quick overview from staff, please.
Sure. So the Planning Commission has seen this at your last couple of meetings. There were a number of unresolved items related to the site and some operational issues that we wanted to solve. So I think I can say that based on everything we've detailed out in the staff report, all of those matters have been resolved either through consensus by the Planning Commission and the applicant at the last Planning Commission meeting, or resolution between the staff and applicant since the last meeting, except for one issue, which is the proposal for the vacuums and the location of the vacuums. So just to give you a few, examples of matters that we've resolved. We've indicated a location in which the curbing should go, and the intent behind that is to help control the queuing lane for the car wash entrance and protect the landscaping in that area, as well as direct runoff from the site to appropriate locations, either some green infrastructure that's being proposed on the site or to the facilities that are on Wauwatosa Road. The dumpster location has altered over to the southeast corner of the property, so as you're exiting the car wash, not entering the car wash, that does create still some congestion as you exit, as well as the parking spaces and the dumpster operations, but far less than the constraints over on the other side of the site. The applicant and the Planning Commission agreed at the last meeting to repair portions of the parking lot and then do a seal across. And then we have met to make sure all of the landscaping is either coordinated in, like, for example, on the west property line, we took a look at the vet clinic's proposal for landscaping, and so there's opportunities to just do some infill, not that we're doubling up on both sides of the property line, and then just updating that, and then updating some of the species throughout the rest of the site, and then of course the inclusion of street trees, which is a code requirement dating back to, the mid-90s. So, we had said that we didn't really want to see those service-oriented, functions or operations such as the vacuum out at the front of the site. The applicant is still here to, talk to the Planning Commission about that location.
Thank you. A lot of progress. We're down to one item, it seems like, which is a lot better than where we were at a month ago. I think I saw Commissioner Chorin's hand up.
With regards to the vacuums, I think there was some discussion as to a canopy or the equipment itself. There seemed to be some options that staff was discussing with them.
Yeah, I think that it included some arms as well as a canopy. So I'll let the applicant speak to what the latest proposal is for the design.
Okay, first, thank Kim and her staff for really kind of working through a lot of the issues that we had. It really came together, and everybody kind of compromised a little bit. This issue, this is one of the styles of car wash with an arm. There's, so many different variety. We just picked one that was more clean than a lot. What this one has, it does not have the canopy. We thought that was something that you wouldn't want to see, so we did take that off. You see on the arm that, not the top arm, the second arm, there is a light on that. If that's troublesome, we could remove that. This is kind of again, I'll call it a stripped down variety, fairly basic in what it is, and we just feel it's better, honestly, for the service of the customers as well as for the other locations, frankly. Would be so much traffic and safety issues that we just couldn't come up with any other location.
So I'll jump in here. Do you have a comment? Okay. Well, I'll put my comments out there first. There are a couple vacuums out there now, correct? But they're ground level units.
Right. That is the option if you feel that that's a better course. You could put 3 lower level. I mean, the ones you typically see, they're about 4 or 5 feet high or something.
Yeah. I understand what staff's trying to achieve throughout the city by keeping the service-oriented things back from the road. I think we've just got a overly constrained legacy site that I wouldn't want to see impeded from being able to make some improvements. But so I think for me, and other commissioners might feel differently or make other motions, but I'm fine with vacuums there. I'm just not liking the vertical massing with the big boom. It just draws too much attention to it. If it's a ground level unit, you could be easily, shaded from public view with some shrubs or some landscaping, and then unless you're there on site and looking for it, you're not going to see it if you're driving by. Everyone expects a vacuum cleaner at a gas station, I would presume, and to not have one would almost be a hardship, especially if you're washing cars. People usually come there to do both, maybe one or the other, but often both. So that's where my head's at. I'm fine with that location, but it's got to be a low to the ground, shaded with a little bit of landscaping, so it's not easily visible from Mequon Road. Commissioner Chorn.
Well, I agree. I think, having the device that was described in that location, given the landscape, the extensive landscaping at that location, I think if we move them to where staff has recommended up in the building, they'd be a lot more visible. So I guess I agree that a lower unit, ground-mounted unit in the present location would be fine.
Commissioner Abadi?
I'm going to deviate a little bit. I don't mind the umbrella arms because that is the latest and greatest in vacuum technology, or at least it is with some of our new car washes around town that have banks and banks of these lined up. I don't mind them in front. At the risk of saying anything, I hope they're not brightly colored. Maybe black or dark gray, something that blends a little more.
Right.
As a customer, I think I'd like the canopy because of rain or snow. I vacuum out my car all the time because I have kids. But from it would be, I think it'd be more obtrusive with the canopy, so I could go either way on that. But I like them in front, especially with the dumpster. If the dumpster and the exit and everything is in that same back corner, I think it'd be too crowded, and I wouldn't feel comfortable as a customer pulling out and pulling into a vacuum spot. And
Any other comments? Commissioner Hawley?
I agree with Nancy. I think it's going to be way too crowded if you put it back there. The position as it is great, and especially because you've beefed up the landscaping quite a bit, it's going to be screened, but I do agree, I think they have to be lower.
Commissioner Strelchak?
I too would make a vote for lower. I would also, if we do get some consensus around the higher ones, I would say definitely no lights on them. Again, I'm looking for a vacuum cleaner to be neutral.
Sure.
Visible from within the site, but not, an advertising point externally. And I think by lighting them, it kind of does that. So
The higher ones can be painted, or they can be brush aluminum or whatever.
My preference is the lower from two standpoints. One, I think it's just a cleaner look to the site. For one, and then for two, if you do put bushes and screening around it, it does also help mitigate that sound a little bit as it leaves the property. You've got, the property line requirements, but anything you can do to minimize that sound, at the road or whatever is always appreciated. So, thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Schaefer's going to pass. Commissioner Chorn?
I'm going to make a motion for approval with the exception that the vacuum will remain where the client has proposed, but that the units be low. I don't know how to
6 feet.
describe,
Under 6 feet.
With non-arm.
They're well under 6 feet, so. Just to make it clear, there's three parking stalls, so you need 3 vacuums, just so everybody's comfortable with that.
I think I'm generally good with that. There's 2 there now. So a motion and a second. Vacuums where the applicant has proposed, but less than 6 feet in height for the vacuum units.
As well as well-screened, and then I heard a comment
Correct.
about color. They're proposed as red.
They only come in aluminum.
I think the ground units are different, or is it?
Yeah,
The-
the low round ones are,
They're brushed aluminum, I think.
right.
Okay. So no color.
Natural aluminum.
Is that a friendly amendment? Do we have to clarify that?
Would you accept that as a friendly amendment?
Yes.
Okay. And the seconder, motion and seconder are good with that? I think that's pretty straightforward. Any further comments or questions on the motion at hand? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And I think we're done here. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Thank you guys
That's
all
right.
for working together
Yeah.
so much on this. That was a lot, and to the city staff as well. That was a big one.
I think you're good. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, we get that way. I'm an engineer. Thank you. Next we have, well, it's under announcements, but it's not really announcements.
Should
It
be
says
policy.
announcements. On the old packet, maybe the new one. Policy, yeah. I have the old draft agenda here. So under policy, Chapter 58 zoning code text amendment related to storage of recreational vehicles. We talked about this a little bit last month, gave some general guidelines to Jack, and he's come back with things in marked up form. Thank you. Commissioner Strelchak.
I had questions on boats. So it's no more than 27 feet boat motor trailer, or is it 20? There's, to my knowledge, no boat that's going to really fit unless it's a 14-foot little aluminum boat. That's every single ski boat on the market you won't be allowed to have on your property. I have a 19-foot boat, and my trailer fits, and it fits in a 22-foot garage with the tongue bent, with the motor on it. It's got an outboard motor. Yep. Yeah, and mine goes in the garage in the winter anyway, so I'm not worried about it. But where I do have concern is that I did receive some feedback from people on the river that they pull out and put their their boat has been kind of on their property since day one. Former Mayor Abendroth reached out to me and he said there's several people that they pull their boat and they've got a spot they've been keeping it for years, and it doesn't seem unreasonable if you have a home on a river, to have an exception to the rule based on the fact that you either have, deeded river access or you're on the river itself, that you'd be allowed to maybe keep a boat of a certain length there, beyond that time.
Someone could also always apply for a variance. So there's other remedies. There might be good reasons for granting them in a very narrow band of examples, but it's hard to write code around all the various permutations. Someone might live at the end of a 150-foot long driveway and you can't see it from the street. Okay, well that might be a good example to approve a variance, but yeah, but it's hard to write general rules around corner cases. So I think it's good first bite at the apple here. It allows for a little bit of expansion without getting crazy, but people can park a boat in their driveway in the summer and not have to put it back in the storage facility every time. That's kind of a nice thing. It's something people are doing anyway. But it doesn't go hog wild and totally take the lid off of it too. Commissioner Urbani.
I like this version. It covers all of my boats. Thank you. I did have a question about boats at a pier. Like, would that be within the 20-foot side lot line? But then I think you answered it saying it's considered a floodway, and so they're not supposed to park them at a pier?
You couldn't park it on land in the floodway, though. Yeah. Commissioner Schaefer.
Just thanks to Jack, because I left last time thinking, oh my gosh, we did not really give a good version of feedback, and yet you came up with this. So, so kudos to you for summarizing and coming up with something that seems palatable to go forward to council, even though you're given kind of a mismatch of feedback.
We are not nearly the most bad body at giving staff feedback, so they're well versed in how to.
I just thought this was a tricky
take
one.
bits
There was a
and
lot of
pieces and mash
discussion.
it all together and
kinda
make it
went
work.
several directions, but I would be comfortable with this going to council to see what comes back. We don't have to. We're just like saying.
So yeah, we'll recommend to move it on to the council then. I think will be ultimately the recommendation that's made when someone makes a motion, but we should probably do it formally so it counts. Yeah.
I would make a motion to approve this proposed text amendment. I make a motion to recommend approval of the proposed text amendment.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other comments or feedback? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that goes on to the council, where who knows what will happen to it. Hopefully it survives largely intact, but we'll see. That brings us to our last item tonight. If someone would care to make the motion to adjourn. Oh, well, we have announcements here. There's no date. So when is the next meeting? Is it 26th? That sounds right. I should know this. Okay, June 26th. That'll be a big one. Yeah, please show up if you can. We have a motion to adjourn and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Sorry. What happened to the Caulfield property? I got this thing